Thank you very much, Paul, Adrian, and to the Herald Sun, to Vicky for having us, to Tim Martin, who's got the best gig. He's retiring. He just watches us give these speeches and off he goes to the races after this. He's in a tough gig. And thank you all very much, folks, to the opportunity to say some words about where I see, where Tim sees, we all see Victoria in the year 2030. And as I was sitting at the table, I thought to myself, well, 2030 seemed a long way away. 2030 seemed, you're watching, vehicles flying and all this kind of jazz. And then you realise it's only 8 years away. And 2014 was 8 years away. So where will 2040 be? The same distance as 2004. You think there's a lot happened since 2004. 2050 will be when 1994 was. And it starts to become frighteningly real as to how close this is and where we need to, as Dennis has said, where we need to aim to be. More than ever before, I am confident about our state's future. But I'm confident more than anything else in the people of Victoria. Not money, not government, not buildings, but in our people. It's our greatest strength. It's always been our greatest strength. One of the reasons as Minister I fronted at this forum and this organisation and others in this room to talk about this great city and our state was that people make a state. Not buildings, not the weather. If it was the weather, Auckland would be one of the best and biggest cities in the world. But Melbourne is and should be. And we've got to think positively about our city and having strategies to get people back to this city, not be passengers in that, but be active and aggressive about it, is so important now than at any other time in our history. And we won't become the largest city in Australia by hope or by luck or by chance. We have to do it through strength and confidence. Confidence. And confidence is around certainty of policy, around knowing what the rules are for business to come here, for jobs to come here, for like my and many families in this room to come here, and that is certainty. What will your children have as their future? What will that look like for them? And that is why I look to the future with great positivity for not just Melbourne, but for Victoria. I'm not interested in Melbourne becoming just the largest city in Australia to suit the ABS. It's got to suit all of us, our lifestyle, the lifestyle we have today, our children, and those people who want to come to this wonderful multicultural city. But I'm more interested in seeing Victoria become a state of cities, not a city-state, to diversify our economic base, to ensure that we've got job growth outside of the city, in where Dennis is from, Warrnambool, as much as we do in other parts of our state and in the CBD of Melbourne. Too often, it's easy for governments to default on one location, a place of 5.25 million people, and not look beyond it. And much of my agenda to date has been focused on growing all of Victoria. It's harder, but it's more important for a long-term plan for our economy and, importantly, for our people. One of our greatest strengths, to which my team has committed quite a lot of funding, not just in direct funding to build things, but in terms of support, is around enhancing, preserving and encouraging multiculturalism. Having Melbourne and other cities now as international places will help with driving not just a tourist market, not just a residential market, a student market, a jobs market, an internationalised economy. We can't rest on that laurel. As a former Minister for Multicultural Affairs, I can tell you how important it is for us to invest and reinvest in that. So Victoria in 2030, I see it as a place where business comes to grow. Not to be taxed out of existence, but to know it's the most competitive place in Australia. Not to be criticised for making a profit, but to be encouraged to reinvest back into our economy, to get younger people who do a gap year in England to come here for 12 months. The same with those kids from China, from America, from India, to come here. And not just Melbourne, but the whole state. It is my absolute focus on bringing back pride and optimism in our state, in not just in words, but in being, in actuality, in the feeling, in the fundamentals. And a lot of that depends on the attitude of the government in charge, the attitude of the person in charge. It's not just a one-man band. It's not just one person says and everyone does. We're 7 million people. Business should be respected for their point of view, for their feedback, and government should listen. Government isn't the smartest people in the room. Government should be there to take advice from industry groups, from councils, from individuals, to partner, to work with them. The Victoria in 2030 I see as one that has managed that successfully. And as I said, that has in place clear and strong strategies to grow our population, to see growth as a strength, not a weakness, to see diversified growth as important, and getting our finances under control, so important. Yes, we have more debt by the end of the forward estimates in this state than New South Wales, Queensland and Tasmania combined. It's easy to run out as a government to put everything on the credit card and to say, look what we're doing. Anyone can do that. It's the hard decisions that show leadership. The hard decisions aren't just promising anything to anyone at any stage and saying it costs what it costs. That's not leadership. Anyone can do that. If I gave any of you a credit card and said it's unlimited, head down to Myer, buy what you like, you'd do that too. But that ain't leadership. We must make sure we get our spending under control for our children's sake, not just living for the moment, for what comes next. We cannot continue to have projects that go cost overruns to the extent they are today. It's not good enough just to say it costs what it costs. That's not leadership. That's just living for the moment. Our interest bills are going to come on that debt to nearly $10 billion a year. That will cripple the way we manage our expenditure as a government going forward. We must get that under control. We must put in place debt caps to manage growth to up to 2030 and beyond. We must ensure that Victoria does not have the fundamentals in place that existed in the early 1990s and late 1980s that saw people leave the state because they knew that despite words, actuality and confidence wasn't there. But we can have that through sensible government, through realistic government and a realistic approach to governing. I've said for some months, and I'll say it again, the most important thing we can do today to prepare ourselves for the future is fix our health system. And no amount of spin can tell us otherwise. When 33 Victorians die waiting for an ambulance, we've got a problem. When it takes 70 minutes for 000 to be answered, we've got a problem. The best legacy we can give the future is a healthy one, a healthy Victoria. To reprioritise money, a hard decision, but a correct decision. To reprioritise money from a project that no one recommended, to go all back into our health service, to put in place new infrastructure in Mildura, in Wodonga, in Warragul, in Melton, and smaller pieces of infrastructure too, so that towns don't miss out as much as cities like St Arnaud, like Daylesford, like Mansfield. A plan to build the whole health system across all of the state, not just marginal seats, but for all of us. So wherever Victorians choose to live, they've got good health care, so we can build that state of cities. So Victorians, when they get older, don't feel they need only to come to Melbourne to get good health care. We want our state to be able to grow and grow everywhere well and healthily, and have facilities that train Victorians, the next generation of healthcare workers outside of Melbourne. I want to have a 2030 where Victorians have trust in their government, trust in what we're saying is the truth, as hard as it seems today. From being told in the last 2 years why things were being done and finding the actuality is different, and the loss of trust that is clear amongst Australians and Victorians today in elected authorities. We cannot have a partnership with our state from government if trust is not there. And that trust must be rebuilt. And from my point of view, again, that comes from attitude, from the people in charge, that ministers are not just a mailman. Ministers are actually there to receive information and act on it, from industry groups, councils, individuals, beefing up our integrity authorities so that IBAC has, the Corruption Commission has the extra 20 million it needs for the right reasons. You have to wonder why on earth any government would seek to reduce its scope rather than expand it, to put money into the Ombudsman where she's asking for it, to ensure the Independent Parliamentary Budget Office has the resources it seeks. It beggars belief that any government in 2022 would not want to do that or would seek to make excuses why that can't or shouldn't be done. Because trust is so important. To redo state of emergency legislation so that Parliament has control of the agenda of the state in times of disaster, not one person, but the Parliament. So that all Victorians feel that their representatives, elected representatives, are working for them, not in spite of them. Folks, I want Victoria in 2030 to be a place where families and business can get ahead, can come here and live here and prosper here for a reason, in the greatest state in Australia, where cost of living and cost of starting or doing business has never been harder. I want Victorians to be confident that this is the place where wherever you are, however old you are, you can set up a business and it can succeed. And there's support in government to make it succeed. That's why cutting 7 taxes is important. And that's what I plan to do, to get us on that path. They're not massive, some are modest. The EV tax, births, deaths and marriages increases. Payroll tax is important though, taking us from the most difficult system to the easiest. It's all about ensuring there's confidence and continuity of policy. To have $2 flat fare on public transport, to get people onto a system that is one of the biggest tram networks or the biggest tram network in the world, one of the biggest metropolitan rail systems in the world. To have half-price V-Line, to get people travelling within our great cities, across the state. Every bit helps, giving students a healthy lunch and a healthy start, so that trains them to be healthier individuals as they grow older. And importantly, having an energy mix that is realistic, not a return to the past, not a return to the days of when my grandfather and uncles worked for Yallourn W for the SEC. A plan that involves gas, which our state has, but also batteries and solar and hydrogen, which we need to invest in. A realistic plan that Europe's already on the path to, that we should be too, and that we can lead the world in if we're smart. Folks, I am very confident about the future of our state. I'm confident about the attitude of Victorians. As a 20-year-old, which I saw was in the depths of despair back in the early 1990s, to where just 10 years later we were leading the nation. And we can again, with confidence, with continuity of policy, with certainty of policy, and with that classic Victorian drive to be the best that we know we have in all of us. Folks, the election in 20-odd days' time will give Victorians that choice. How you vote is up to you. We live in a democracy. Tim and I and other parties will put our wares to the Victorian people. We should be proud we live in a place where we can choose, and government will continue or government will change peacefully. As Dennis said, my family came from a country where that didn't happen. So one thing we all appreciate, and I hope Victorians do appreciate, is that our politics, however combative it is, at the end of the day when we come together in Parliament, is one where I still believe, and I still truly believe, that all of us are in it for the right reasons. And I certainly am, and that is only to see the best interests of our state for the years that come ahead. Thank you very much.